Welcome to the first of two 2021 Meet the Candidates forums. I'm your host and timekeeper, Steve Jacobs. The second Meet the Candidates forum is scheduled for Monday, February 1st at 6 p.m. and we'll talk more about those details a little bit later. Right now, we're going to introduce you to the candidates. Let me just share my screen here. And for those who might have phones and find this hard to read, I'm going to go ahead and read the names. These are the candidates for the board of directors. Patricia Escobar, who is an incumbent, Carolyn Gohler, Thomas Leonard Knowles, Renee Osbourne, also an incumbent, Joan Parrish, Robert Riddick, also an incumbent, and Lamont Sonny Williams, also an incumbent. Stop the share. Just so everybody knows, all candidates have been invited to participate in today's session. Homeowners have submitted questions directly to our moderator, Mr. Richard Ibarra. And questions for today's session have been selected by the moderator, and candidates are not aware of the questions that have been selected. Without further delay, let me introduce our moderator, Mr. Richard Ibarra. He is a well-respected community association industry executive and an experienced and impartial moderator. He's worked with many nonprofits, labor unions, government agencies, public utilities, and currently serves as the interim executive director for the National Lawyers Guild of Los Angeles. He's also worked in HOA professional management, having served as CAI and San Diego executive director for the past 5 years. Mr. Ibarra is well positioned to moderate today's HOA candidate forum. So Richard, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Steve. Just to cover a couple of things with you before we get started with the line of questioning. The purpose of the forum today is to introduce the candidates who are seeking your votes at Sunnymead Ranch, answer homeowners' questions that were all submitted to me, and allow homeowners to make, in order to allow homeowners to make an informed decision regarding your community. Steve, as he mentioned, is our timekeeper, and he'll be keeping time and letting folks know when they have 30 seconds to go and when their time is up. The rules of the road, as we call them, will be the 222 system. 2-minute introduction, 2 minutes to answer questions, and 2 minutes for closing remarks. After the presentation, we will review the critically important timeline of the voting process for this year, and it is dramatically different, I understand, from previous years. So with that, we'll get started with the line of questioning, and thank you again for the, 18 Sunnymead residents who are online now with us.
Richard, I'm sorry. This is Renee Osbourne. I just want to pause a moment. One of our other candidates just emailed me and said he needs the login information, so we can go ahead and continue, but I will probably go off audio or off video so that I can try to help him, okay?
Thank you for that, Renee. That's good.
All right.
Participation is always great. I would say that just as we get started, I wanted to mention, in order that we don't get into what I did on my summer vacation syndrome, listening to 5 candidates in a row, I'll mix up the questions. So ask one person a question, go to another one, maybe 2 people at a time, and then we'll continue with the question. But we'll come back to everyone answering each question that I get that we have time for today. All right, with that, we get started. Since Renee was going to be first asked, we'll move to Joan Parrish for the first question. Joan, would you please describe the role of directors in managing our HOA?
Richard, can I jump in real quick? I think we want to introduce everyone first.
I think well, I thought Steve had done that, but I can do that again. So we've got with us in alphabetical order. With us is Carolyn Gohler, Joan Parrish, Robert Riddick. Oh, and I left out Renee because she's not back on screen, and Renee Osbourne. We're awaiting someone else, so it'll either be Thomas Nails or Sonny Williams.
Right. I think before we get into the questions, that we've got the 2-minute introduction of each of the candidates first.
That's my bad. It was I had gone past that one on my sheet here.
Not a problem.
With that, thank you, Robert, for that correction. And I hope that's the only mistake I make today. If it is, I'm doing pretty well.
Not at all. You are.
With that, we'll start with Carolyn Gohler. Carolyn, would you please give your 2-minute opening statement?
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everyone. As you said, I'm Carolyn Gohler. I'm a 24-year homeowner here, and simply put, I love Sunnymead Ranch. I've raised 3 children here, and now my 6 grandchildren, all local, love spending time here as well, building their memories. Following an early retirement several years ago, I was finally able to regularly attend the open forum board meetings. And I paid close attention and listened and learned. I observed the directors and how they went about being in a directors meeting. I observed what I think are good directors, that they were prepared, knowledgeable, they contributed to the discussions, and they presented their decisions that were before them before voting. I began to realize after attending lots of these meetings that I actually also had a skill set and the attributes to also become a good member. In continuing to think about that, I took an 8-hour class from CAI, and they have workshops and classes all over the country. It was a great introductory class, comprehensive, but of course it's basics. And things that I learned there, fiduciary duties, finances, reserve funding, board meetings, CC&Rs, bylaws, Sterling Davis Act, and much, much more. Just a tip of the iceberg, but
30 seconds remaining.
I commit to you that I will be a knowledgeable director, that I'm ready, willing, and able to serve you, our Sunnymead Ranch homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move right into Joan Parrish.
Good afternoon, everyone. I've lived in Sunnymead Ranch. I'm a homeowner. Been here for a couple of years now, and I have attended also the open meetings, particularly more involved this year. And you know, with COVID and everything that's going on, it's been very challenging, I realize, for everyone. So with my extensive business background, I've grew up in Riverside. I've traveled quite a bit. I previously worked for DHL Supply Chain as a regional health and safety manager. I'm now a risk and safety consultant. I have about 100 clients that I work with. This is my forever home. I did many travels. This is my 5th home, but now that this is my forever home and I plan on retiring here, I really desire to get more actively involved. And I believe with my extensive business background and involvement as a manager, I was actually a general manager of a warehouse at one point, managed many employees, have managed a large, P&L, budgetary, done many budgets, that type of thing. I believe that I would add value to the board. And I think that with all of the
30 seconds remaining.
knowledge here, I would gain experience I have. But I just really want to be involved. I think I have the empathy and the engagement qualities, and formal education as well as experience. And I'm hoping that you would choose me as a board member, because I think I could really help.
Thank you, Joan. Move to Renee Osbourne for your 2-minute introduction.
Hey, Richard, thank you so much. Homeowners, welcome. And I am so pleased to see that we have a large number of homeowners attending. It is critically important to know us, the candidates, and make sure that you can have an informed decision. So a little bit about me. I am an incumbent. I was elected to the board in 2019. So I've been on for 2 years now. I've learned a lot. I came in wide-eyed, and I've learned a lot since then, but I'm not jaded. The goals that I have for this year, based on my experiences, I really think that our big complaint here at the ranch is that the property values are going down because homes are looking pretty shabby. I think in large part, the only way that we're going to be able to address that is from a consistent enforcement of our CC&R policy, our CC&R violations. So I think that's really important. I would like to expand homeowner communications. I hit the ground running the first year, and we actually had a lot of communications going out. And since this last election, it has gone downhill. Actually, I found out yesterday that no longer are our emails listed in the roundup, because I wanted to make sure that you as homeowners had an opportunity to drop us an email.
30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Obviously, we need to maintain fiscal responsibility to keep our assessments low whenever possible. And then I'm interested in developing short and long-term goals with the homeowners, not just us, not what I want to see, but what homeowners want to see. And what are we willing to pay for those kinds of improvements? Some are easy, some are not so low. But that's who I am, that's what I represent. And I'm going to go on mute again because I think this other person here is Thomas Knowles, okay?
Thank you very
Thanks.
much, Renee. Robert Riddick, your 2-minute introduction.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today, first of all. And I'm glad that we've got the participation that we have. One of the things that I've always strived for is inclusion. And today's presentation, I hope, is a good example of how we strive for that. So a little bit about me, for those of you who don't already know me, I'm a retired IT professional. I retired in 2006, and from that point on, I transitioned to becoming an HOA volunteer advocate. And I've continuously served in that role since then, both on our board of directors, also in that role for a local HOA advocacy organization, as well as serving nationally with another HOA advocacy organization. So I guess you probably guess I'm pretty passionate about my commitment to HOA advocacy. And I'm constantly striving to improve the quality of life for not just my fellow homeowners here in Sunnymead Ranch, but for the almost 13 million other HOA residents who also reside here in California. I'm also an Air Force veteran and served during the Vietnam era. I think I just aged myself, but that's okay. I'm also an Army brat. I've lived overseas for more years than I care to think about, including cities like Berlin, Paris, London, Yokohama, Japan, Guam, in the Philippines, et cetera, et cetera. But more important, I'd like to pigtail on what Renee said, because we come from the same cloth. I'm interested in the fiscal responsibility of this organization. I really want to see us make sure that every dollar that is spent wisely, that we've done our due diligence and making sure
30
that—
seconds left.
Thank you, sir. And we do our due diligence on making sure that every dollar that is spent has gone through a process where we know it is being spent correctly. And there's oversight for every one of those pennies and dollars and dimes involved in that decision making. So I guess you would say I'm more of a cup half full kind of guy than a half empty kind of guy. And I'm capable of changing my mind if I'm convinced. I like to think that I'm reasonably intelligent, understand the King's language and how to express it. And I'm here. And finally, I'm asking for your vote to continue in this work. And I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Robert. It's now we've been joined by Thomas Leonard Nails. Thomas, what we've been doing is having a 2-minute introduction by each candidate. So it's these 2 minutes are yours. Go ahead, Thomas, please.
Thomas, we don't have audio.
You may be on, it doesn't say you're on mute, but you may be muted. Yeah, you're muted. There you go. I think it's not connecting to your speaker. I think there's something happening with your speaker.
Thomas, I might suggest that you take your mouse pointer down to the lower left of your screen where it says mute. And if you click the little up arrow, there's a spot where you can select your headset as the microphone and select your headset as the speaker.
Thank you for that, Renee. And while we're waiting, I just want to, again, applaud all of you, homeowners, residents of Sunnymead who are here today to protect your investment, to look at how you're going to continue to keep the value, protect your value, as well as the quality of life in your community.
Can you,
Bingo.
Oh,
you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. All right, my name is Thomas Knowles. I moved here about 3 years ago, and my background is I have about 46 years in real estate. I'm a real estate broker as well as a loan officer, and I run my own company. I've ran several different companies over the years, and I've managed some of the larger real estate offices. I work for Quantum Management System for several years since 1970, and taught about 300 real estate agents a year. So I seen an opportunity. I think this is a great neighborhood, and I think we have some great people in it. And so I'm not going in it with any preconceived ideas, and I would like to just try to learn. And as I learn, hopefully I can contribute. But it's not my thing to try to overturn everything. And is there anything that you want to ask me? Like I say, I've been doing real estate since 1947. I have a gold card in exchanging. I've worked in management and investments. And I look forward to working with all of you.
Seconds remaining.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds remaining. You still have
30 seconds, okay. And so basically that's about all the only thing I have to say, unless you have something specifically that you would like to ask me. I'm an open book. I don't have any skeletons, hopefully, in the closet.
Thank you very much, Thomas. What that first round was the 2-minute introduction, and we'll get to the questions now. As I mentioned before you came on, instead of just going one person, one question and everyone answer, I'll have a couple of people answer each question, then I'll move on to another and come back so that everyone answers it, but we don't want to get into the putting people to sleep with what I did on my summer vacation when it goes over and over, so with this many candidates. So
All right.
with that, I'd like to open up the first question to Carolyn Gohler. Carolyn, would you please describe the role of directors in managing our HOA?
Okay. What I've learned from the class that I took, the CAI class, one of the most important parts of a director's role is their fiduciary duty. And that is putting interests of the association before any personal interests. There needs to be a high standards of honesty, integrity, undivided loyalty, and diligence to be an informed and effective director. So a person needs those skills. And other components of that director's role would be to ensure the maintenance of the common areas, such as landscaping, amenities, just everything that needs to look good and be in good shape for the enjoyment of all of us, and the surrounding common areas throughout the community. So one of the things that I think Renee mentioned was the rule enforcement of our CC&Rs. Our neighborhood has become looking a little shabby in a lot of areas. So that would be one of my goals as well, is to work with the other directors to see how we can improve that process of getting these violations corrected and our community looking better. And also a director's role is financial management, preparing and adhering to budgets, preparing budgets making sure the collections are done and that sound decision making is used in reaching those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'd like to ask the same question of Thomas Leonard Nails. Thomas, would you please describe the role of directors in managing our HOA?
Well, as I said, I just recently came here 3 years ago, and I really loved the neighborhood. There are some improvements that I'm hearing you guys expand on, and that's to keep the values of the properties up. I think as a broker, I would consider contacting people if we have a way of knowing that they're having problems making their payments or whatever, and maybe inviting them in for some kind of counseling to see whether or not we can facilitate them getting out of that situation, or recognizing what the situation is and see if they need the help as a board member. I think that's one of the things that I would look at. And I noticed that in some of the properties too, I have a house very close to me, and it looks like it must be 15 or 20 people living in the house. I don't know, you know, they got cars all around the streets, all on the thing and stuff like this right here, and addressing those kind of concerns. But I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to be as diligent as possible in terms of keeping up our values. I mean, that's paramount
30
to all
seconds
of us.
remaining.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Thomas. The
Uh-huh.
second question, I want to pose it first to Renee. What in your background lends itself to our association's business?
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. For those of you who don't know me, I have a storied career in learning and development. I've managed teams of folks who provided training to a multinational mutual funds company. So my skill set that I bring back from that is detailed conscious to a fault sometimes. As part of that role, I would have to gather requirements, which means asking questions, being able to articulate possible responses, and so on. So communication skills, critical thinking skills. I managed a $3 million budget. So I'm not an accountant by any stretch of the imagination, but I do understand financial processes. I understand how to read balance sheets and so on. So I think that really lends itself to my role here. I mentioned communication skills. I would manage large projects, and if you're a project manager, it's communication, communication, communication. Everyone needs to be on the same page. And here, I think there has been a disconnect for a number of reasons between what the board does and our homeowners. And when you're not privy to information, or it's not readily available to you, then people get up in arms, you know. And if there's that transparency, and that's the buzzword, then I think that people can understand that this board is looking out for their best interests, because your interests are our interests. We're homeowners here as well.
Thank you very much, Renee. Joan, same question. What in your background lends itself to our association's business?
Well, my background is pretty diverse. I have about 15 years in the banking industry, 10 years in the transportation industry, and then many years experience in logistics and leadership and management. I have managed budgets, created budgets, maintained budgets for very large warehouses. You know, I had up to 100 employees at one point. Leadership and management skills. I believe in a servant leadership style. I believe that the board, any board or directors, should have more of a servant mentality. So our homeowners, they have a responsibility as well. But we, as if it was a board of directors, they have a responsibility to serve the homeowners, meaning in protecting the property values and, I had made the expectations of what could possibly happen if the budgets are not managed properly, solving any problems that come about. I do believe that homeowners should be more involved in that process. So like when Thomas mentioned, you know, bringing them in and having discussions with them, and as a part of
30 seconds remaining.
solving of the problem, and not just dictating or enforcing. People want to be involved and included, you know, more of an inclusive servant leadership style.
Thank you very much, Joan. The third question in our series here, well, this next one will go to Robert Riddick. Robert, if you could change a CC&R regulation, what is it that you would change?
Wow, that's a tricky one. I think the one that I would probably change is the process for making changes themselves to the CC&Rs. Right now, there are a lot of homeowners out in our community who don't like the rules that are embedded in the CC&Rs. And to be honest with you, our association is 37 years old. Those CC&Rs were written and drafted by the developer 37 years ago. And times were different. Times were much, much different than they are today. Technology has certainly impacted all of us. Even the structure of communities has changed, where we are now, and we're always a single family home community. There are new laws in place now that will dramatically change that. And my premise is that if there was one thing that we could change, it would be the way that we actually amend our CC&Rs. Today, it's an extremely laborious process. It takes a supermajority of the homeowners here to make that change go into effect. It takes deliberative processes in order to fine tune the CCRs before they come up for a vote. And right now, it's just so a daunting a task to undertake that it's almost impossible to change your CC&R. So I would look for that as a change, that the process to make that happen is a lot more lenient, a lot more flexible, a lot more inclusive for homeowners to be a part of that process than it is now, and move on. That would be my one change, my suggestion for a change to the CCRs, how you actually change them and make it easier.
Thank you very much, Robert. The same question will go next to Carolyn Gohler. If you could change a CC&R regulation, which one would you change?
I am not familiar with every CC&R regulation. It's a massive thing to read, but just for my knowledge of what some of the concerns are, like Robert just explained, it's very difficult to get them changed, and requiring a certain percentage of the homeowners buy-in, that's difficult. We have a hard time meeting quorum, even 15% of our homeowners to meet quorum for an election. So that makes it that much more difficult in getting that a kind of number of people to really make changes to the CC&Rs. So not having been on the board already, I can't identify a particular one, but again, we need to do something about the conditions of the homes that are becoming just not conducive to wanting to buy a home here. We're not the jewel we once were in terms of how our community is looking.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Moving back up to the first question again, this time for Renee. Would you please describe the role of directors in managing our HOA?
So as I said, I've been on the board now for 2 years, and I have learned a lot. I do not believe that directors should micromanage our professional staff that we hire to run our day-to-day operations. I think that's critical. Now, we need oversight of them, just like any other managerial or leadership role, but not telling them how to do their job. Mentoring, of course. I view us in a couple of different ways. It's not as glamorous, if you want to call it that. We just conduct business. You know, if the fences need to be replaced, we get quotes, we pay them. There are bigger projects, there are little projects. But I think what I'm more interested in is doing that kind of 1,000-foot view of our association and take a step back and say, instead of the onesie twosie things that people want to have done, let's have a plan. You know, and again, that goes back to that short and long-term planning sessions with homeowners so that we get a sense. I mean, I've heard from a director, we want it to be like Disneyland. Well, I don't know, is that what everyone wants? And what we want and what we are willing to pay for could be different
30
things.
seconds.
And so, so again, I'm thinking that we need the leadership role, the advisory role, the people who are going to keep us on track with our goals. And then, of course, you know, get the job done, get the repairs made to the fences and so on. But that's just the job.
Thank you, Renee. Joan, the same question. Would you please describe the role of directors in managing our HOA?
Well, I would somewhat have to piggyback off of what Renee had said, in that we would need to be at a, you know, like she said, like a 30,000 view, and allow the people that are doing the tasks to actually do them. But at the same time, I believe in allowing them to be included in decision making. So if there's something that's coming up that needs to be done, say in the maintenance department, you know, as a board, we all get together and go, yeah, this needs to be done. But should we maybe get with the maintenance crew and get their input on it before, you know, before something changes or go forth or whatever? I also believe that the board can, there's things you can be very transparent, you know, very open and honest about. And you should always have a high ethical value and be open and honest. But I also don't think that the board should be always communicating every little, you know, thing that's going on within the board, because then you have homeowners that no matter what you do, it's never going to be right. And they're going to be complaining. And it just incites more problems. But then there are things that can be broadly communicated out on a regular basis. So I think there's communication for sure. Top, you know, if there's ever any issues, communication is the
30
issue.
seconds.
And then leadership, you know, being strong leaders and being able to include, but also direct.
Thank you very much, Joan. Moving back to one of the other questions for Thomas. Thomas, what in your background lends itself to our association's business?
Well, having managed large companies and large amount of agents, and one of the things that I discovered is that a lot of time people are in need of counseling. And the root of that is that there is, within any problem lies a solution. And to communicate with people in such a way that they develop a context of what the problem is, lies a solution, and it becomes a solution for themselves. And I use that as the basis of communicating in a way that the people walk away at least with the experience that they had their own input into it, rather than dictating to them. And I think that's one of the keys of communication in our situation. And and so having some knowledge of, you know, how property works and things like this here, that's why I'm really keen on having a support organization or some type of support for people that do get into problems. And people, we've all gotten into some problems sometime, but to have a board that is supportive of supporting you getting out of the situation, then that would be greatly appreciated, because that would help some of the people that the grass is not cut, or this is not done, or that's not done. Well, we know what the problem is, what are they willing to do about it, what we can do about it, and make suggestions so we can keep it cleaned up that way. And I think that'll increase our values right there.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Robert, I'm going to move the same question to you. What in your background lends itself to our association's business?
So before my retirement, I worked for a handful of companies. The last one, I ran the IT department as VP of Information Systems, a staff of about 300 people. It was an opportunity that required me to make sure that I understood how to manage that group of folks, which included pretty much wearing every hat that my folks wore themselves. I had to be versed in how to do everything from systems analysis to programming to systems design, you name it. I wore that hat temporarily just because it was required to understand the background of the folks who were reporting to me. I take that same experience to the board here and working with my fellow board members. I see all of us as peers. None of us are above each other. None of us are subservient to each other. And I try to extend that to them through that same philosophy. I'm one voice. There are 5 of us on the board. I carry no more weight in a decision than the other 4 of my co-board members. And it means that I've got to collaborate with them and they have to collaborate with me. And if we're successful, that's what took place. The times that we're not successful, and sometimes that happens with boards. You know, we all have our own personalities, and part of the challenge is working together as a cohesive team and a cohesive unit. So that background I bring from my past experience hopefully lends itself to making sure that we can work together. There are going to be times, thank you, there are going to be times when there are exceptions. That happens. In organizations, we're not always going to be on the same page at the same time on the same issue. But at the end of the day, we've all got to be able to walk away from that disagreement, that non-agreement, and still remain as a cohesive working team. So that's it.
Thank you, Robert. And just a reminder to everyone who's watching and listening that these questions did come from the homeowners that were sent to me in the previous 72 hours before this forum. I'd like to next go to Renee with the question: if you could change a CC&R regulation, which one would you change?
You know, when you asked that first question, I started thinking, and then you went to Robert, and I liked his answer. I want to take his. It was kind of like, if you could get 3 wishes from the genie, what would your wish be? I'd like 3 more wishes or 10 wishes, or because the CC&Rs, you know, when I came into this, I was idealistic, thinking we could change things. And the board, my fellow board members at the time, had said, yeah, that's a great idea. However, it's a CC&R. And in order to change that, you need 67% of the folks to vote. Now, the people who are on this call, our homeowners, you know, they know that we have a hard time meeting quorum, which is 25% of our homeowners to vote. And then it goes down to 15. And there have been years that we haven't even gotten 15. So the ability to get 67%, you know, that's crazy. So I want that one. But over and above is something slightly better. I would like to see something that, so one of the challenges I have is I want to improve the properties. And I know that we have rules and regulations in place. I've had discussions about, you mean if I want to plant a bush in my front yard, I have to go to the architectural committee? I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. You know, like if I were to rip them all out, perhaps, but to plant a tree, to repaint my ultra pure white fascia because it's getting a little dingy, those are the kinds of things. But, you know, in the big scheme of things, Robert's was a much better answer.
Thank you very much, Renee. Joan, the same question. If you could change a CC&R regulation, what would you change?
In thinking about, you know, prior to this meeting, about different things that as a homeowner, you know, that I would like to see different in our neighborhood and that type of thing. I was thinking about, and I'm sure there's something, you know, as was mentioned before, you know, I don't know every single verbiage within the CC&R, but I have familiarized myself with it over the past couple of years. It would be the homeowners that rent out their homes. And I think that there needs to be maybe a different CC&R change where that's related, because not all renters are going to care about the property. And the owner may live in another state or who knows. So nothing is really being watched. So I think that there needs to be some changes there, because I think that would definitely improve the property values, the look, you know, everything, right? The care of the property overall.
Thank you very much, Joan. Moving back to a previous question, the last person to answer it. This is for Carolyn. Carolyn, what in your background lends itself to our association's business?
I have a varied background. I've worked in a lot of different types of industries, and in the early years, it was administrative, and as I went along, it became more of a managerial role. I had direct reports to me, but I advanced in positions because of what I contributed, and those generally were meeting goals. Different types of goals, whether they financial goals, sales goals, or whatever needed to be done. And from those different positions, I constantly improved my skill sets of relying on research and analysis, developing my written and communication skills, written and oral, looking at decision making, always with that ROI or focused decision making in mind, or return on investment rather, having a collaborative working style, having a creative mindset, being goal oriented. And those attributes have served me well in my career. And I think all of those things can enable me to become a good director. I'm not there yet. I haven't been a director, and there's lots I need to learn, but again, I think those types of experiences and skills that I've developed would make me a good board director. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. And the last person to answer our first question to Robert Riddick, what would you please describe the role of directors in managing our HOA?
So I think that our primary role is ensuring, as Thomas had mentioned earlier, the value of our homes. That is our biggest investment here. Every single person who moved here and purchased a home made that commitment to that investment. So I think our primary task is protecting that investment to make sure that it maintains the highest possible value that it could. And then I think the other thing is that we should also be responsible for maintaining the common areas, which include all of our amenities. You know, our community stands out as a diamond here in Moreno Valley. And there's two reasons for that: the way that we keep up our homes and the way we keep up our common areas. Most folks that I've run into that never heard of us before, they come here for the first time, always make that same comment. I didn't know you guys were here. This place is beautiful. I mean, you drive up Old Lake and you hit the lake at the dead end of Sunnymead Parkway, and it's like, where'd this come from? That's one of our tasks as directors, to make sure that we constantly and always maintain the beauty of this association, all of its amenities, and finally, we need to make sure that we enforce all of our rules and regulations here. I know there are going to be people who say, you know, you guys are too tough on us sometimes, or why aren't you doing something to the guy down the street? As Thomas also mentioned earlier, you know, what about the guy that just takes everything out of his yard and leaves it bare? Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to live next door to that. So the job of the board of directors is to make sure that we fairly, impartially, but consistently enforce the violations in this association the way we were tasked to do. If you create a violation, you should be held accountable for correcting it. I think those are the three main things we need to enforce here as directors.
Thank you, Robert. Thomas, the third question, you'd be the last one to answer that one. If you could change a CC&R regulation, what would you change?
Well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I know very little about the CC&Rs. You know, I don't think I've ever read a CC&R all the way through. You know, I know what it does, you know, with my background. But I would like to piggyback on what Robert was saying in the sense that we should hold people accountable to many of the important things that is in the CC&R, and they are there to protect us. But I think the way we should do it is by communicating with them, as I said before, having some type of meeting with them on a support basis that, you know, so we can get an understanding of where they are and what will facilitate them participating without us dictating it. And I think that would kind of ease some of the tension of you do this, you do that, you know. And I think that's one of the ways I would go about handling the situation. But I would be very strict about, like I say, I have a house very close to me and they got 15, 16 cars, you know, and all these people live in one house. I mean, it's like, oh, wow, you know, I mean, I'm not trying to make them bad, wrong, and awful. And maybe people have to do whatever they need to do, but it doesn't, you know, lean itself very well to having an upgraded community. I lived 30 years in South Hills. I don't know whether or not you guys know where that is. That's on the back of the golf course in West Covina. They end up selling my house for 1.3 million. So I'm used to other things. And I used to buy 50 houses a year. So I've been into different areas. I came here and I was very impressed. And of course I was going through a divorce. So therefore I was looking for lower payments anyway. But I really was, I was really struck by, like Robert said, the magnificent things that we have to offer. But having been here 3 years, I say, you know, there's some things that we could improve on. Now, what they are, I don't know, but I'm just saying the way that we should confront that is to actually have people come in that is in violation and do it on a supportive manner as opposed to a dictatorial type understanding. Does that make sense?
Next 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Thomas. That was the first round. Thank you. The next round of questions are going to be around volunteerism, priorities, and fiscal management. So just be prepared for those three. Starting with Carolyn, HOA directors are volunteers. Please share volunteer roles that you've had that benefit our community.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm not a director, so that is not a role of volunteerism, but I'd like to be. A few years ago, I took over the leadership of the yoga club because the previous leader was no longer able to do it due to illness. I joined the activities committee as co-chair, first as just a member, and then she and I became co-chairs of the activities committee. We tried to reinvent some things. We worked hard, and it was loads of fun. I became a lead on the Nextdoor community a couple of years ago. And one of the first tasks that I took on was to get the boundaries realigned for our Nextdoor neighborhood, because some of our people were not in the same neighborhood. We were Sugar Hill, they were part of Sunnymead Ranch West neighborhood. And a lot of times people posted just to Sugar Hill that involved HOA matters, and then those people were left out. Renee was one of them. So I worked with Nextdoor corporate and went through all of the processes of getting those boundaries realigned. And not only that, our old community called Sugar Hill had a lot of homes that reached down 2 or 3, 4 miles that were not part of Sunnymead Ranch at all. So with that realignment, I accomplished getting all of Sunnymead Ranch homes into the Nextdoor neighborhood boundaries. So because a lot of times people discussed Sunnymead Ranch business on the forum, and a lot of times we got input from outside the neighborhood that wasn't conducive. Sometimes people in our neighborhood posted things that were a little contentious. It wasn't putting Sunnymead Ranch in a good light. So we just wanted to keep all that within Sunnymead Ranch, even though Nextdoor is an extension of the HOA. A lot of our homeowners do communicate through that. And it was just important to have us all in the same neighborhood.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Same question for Joan. Joan, HOA directors are volunteers. Please share volunteer roles that you've had that benefit our community.
I'm not sure how much it benefited the community as a whole, but I volunteered time at Donkeyland, and I'm sure all of us are familiar with Donkeyland, to have a better understanding of, you know, what Donkeyland is doing and the reserve that they have and that type of thing, and how they're protecting the animals, but also how they're trying to control them in a better way to, you know, because we know they come into our neighborhoods, and I've never had that issue currently. I mean, I know they come to my yard because I see their their droppings, but they do damage some people's yards and things like that. So it helped me understand how they're trying to rally those animals back in and keep them away from our neighborhoods. And then other things I've done is I volunteer at church. I've had some administrative duties and troubled teens and things like that. But through the Nextdoor app, this year, has been very challenging for quite a few people. And so I've tried to volunteer to help. I've mowed a couple of grass, lawns for people that, couldn't get out and do it themselves, and it was in a bad way. Maybe financially, they were really in dire straits. So, I would either take them food or help them with their kids or things like that. I've done that throughout the year. And actually I get a lot of joy out of doing that. It really does. I think it benefits the community, and it lets everybody know that there is someone in this community that cares about them.
Thank you so much, Joan. The next question for Renee. Renee, what would you say are your top 3 priorities for the HOA in 2021?
My top 3 priorities. I'm going to grab my flyer here. So my goals for the HOA this year, as I said, they've changed based on my experience again. So my number 1 goal is to increase the property values through consistent CC&R enforcement. And to Thomas's point, and I do appreciate your point, Thomas, that that we would want to bring them in so that we could advise and so on. And that actually is part of the role of a director. So when CC&Rs violations are sent out, and after they work through this very lengthy process, they have an opportunity to come, actually at any point in time, and come and discuss their challenges with the board. And so that's part of our role. So I do appreciate that. But I really do think, I was advised by all of my fellow board members, all of them, that really the board gets very little traction until you start to find them, unfortunately. Apparently that's what it takes to get someone's attention. The whole purpose of the violation process is to gain compliance with the CC&Rs. It's not punitive. It's like, come on, come, the board is here and we're willing to help you. Again, homeowner communication.
30 seconds.
We need to get our website. We had a website, we no longer have it. Our newsletter is interesting. The process that I started last year, addressing the homeowner answers to the open forum questions. Again, we had another month go by, no Q&A. I find that really, really challenging. And if I get reelected to the board, I'm just going to have to fight a little harder for that. And then again, long and short-term goals in partnership. We'll have some more of these Zoom meetings, man. They're easy. But next time, we'll have homeowners be able to chime in and talk and tell us what they think about our long and short-term goals and add to those lists, just like you would in any other corporate environment.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Renee.
Thank you.
Moving to Robert, same question. What are your top 3 priorities for the HOA in 2021? Or what should they be?
So this may sound a little repetitious, but I'm going to take a little bit from what Renee had said, and I think it applies to all of us as board members. Number 1, and we used to implement this every year until recently. Number 1 in my 3 categories is strategic planning. You're not going to have a successful business, and this is a business. This is a $4.5 million business that we're actually running here or governing. You cannot do that successfully unless you have a strategic plan. And that strategic plan lays out exactly what your goals and objectives are over the term of your time in that position. The way we structured our board now, we have that consistency of a plan being developed and passed on to the next board, even if you're not successful in retaining that seat on the board. That plan that you may have started will continue because of the way we're structured with overlaying terms. So that would be my first priority, is to make sure that we have sat down as a board every year and developed a strategic plan that will guide us for the next 3 years, 5 years. And along the way, modify it as necessary, make changes, which include additions to it, takeaways from it. But extremely important, strategic planning. My second would be to create and implement a communications strategy, as Renee had said earlier. We did have a pretty effective communications program going on until after this last election, where things kind of went a different direction for a lot of reasons. But I would really encourage that we sit down and, as part of that strategic plan,
30 seconds.
lay out how we are going to design and implement a very effective communication strategy, so that every single homeowner here is always aware of what's going on here, whether they just go online to our Facebook page, whether there's a communications link to customer service, or any of those kind of avenues that they could take. And third, education. Education for every board member. I would encourage and I would support education for our homeowners who have an interest in what's going on here. We should make that available to every single one of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. And we'll come back to everyone else in the same questions in a bit. This next question will be going to Thomas. Thomas, prior to last year's board election, there was much talk about needing a forensic audit. What are your thoughts on, and would you be supportive of a forensic audit?
I'm really not as versed on that as maybe I should, but I don't see any harm in it if it's, as long as the expense is not exorbitant, you know. But I think we should have an ongoing accounting situation where monies that are spent, it can be easily traced and taken care of, and or accounted for. I was thinking when we were saying before, there's an old saying that one of my instructors used to say all the time, and he said that you can have people in your life and you can have standards, but you can't have people in your life operating inversely proportional to your standards. Either you choose to hold on to your standards and let go of the people, or you hold on to people and let go of your standards. And so that's a decision that we're going to have to make, especially when we're dealing with the CCs and Rs and how we implement those violations and stuff. But as far as forensic audit, I don't know if that's what we need, or do we need to implement a system where it's an ongoing situation where every month, if you want to look on what month it is or whatever it is, that it's right there, it's open.
30 seconds.
And yeah, and I think this was shared by Renee. I think it was Joan, one of them, said that you know, we should be more communicative in terms of being able to communicate what's going on. And we can't do that if we have to wait around and do a forensic audit every 6 or 7 years. I don't know when you had the last one, you know. But I think we should have in place something that doesn't even require a forensic audit because they're ongoing, you know.
Thank you, Thomas, for your thoughts. Joan, we're going to go to you with the same question. Prior to last year's board election, there was much talk about needing a forensic audit. What are your thoughts, and would you be supportive of a forensic audit?
Well, I would have to ask first what brought about that question of a forensic audit. Was there, you know, questioning, you know, how the spend was going? Was there ethics involved, things like that? But I do believe that there should be accounting responsibility. But I think it does need to be reviewed more often, and that's going to ensure accuracy. So I think, you know, like conducting a regular budgetary review to understand what the current spending is, and, you know, even maybe going line for line, you know, budget budgetary, looking at the buckets, as it were, and see, you know, what's coming in, what's going out. And, you know, do we really need to spend that, or can we, is something we can put off? You know, is it a vote that's, you know, the whole board is wanting to do, or is it just a couple of people? So I think it has to be reviewed more. You know, why are we doing this? Because doing a forensic audit is going to cost money. So, you know, is that spend needed, or is it something that we can realign and do a monthly review just to know that we're in, you know, everything's in alignment?
Thank you very much, Joan. Robert, going back to a previous question for you, HOA directors or volunteers, please share volunteer roles you've played that benefit this community.
Oh, gee. Okay, well, there are several that I'm involved in. I'm trying to think of the one that would share the most sympathy. Oh, I would say that my volunteer work with the Salvation Army in San Diego. I do a volunteer involvement with them every Thanksgiving and every Christmas. Salvation Army in downtown hosts a homeless Thanksgiving and homeless Christmas event. The people who support that and make that work, and we have literally thousands of homeless that show up on those 2 days in downtown San Diego to participate in that dinner. And it is all supported by volunteers. I can't tell you how touching it is to watch families come in. This is the only meal they have for that day or even for that week, and sometimes a couple of weeks, and just to watch them is so ingratiating for those of us who participate, that you can't help get a sense of what it feels like to walk in other people's shoes when you step back and see people who could very well be you. And so I bring that to the community here because there are a lot of times, as again, I'm going to go back to what Thomas said, there are folks who are in trouble. There are folks who are in trouble every day here. And especially on the day of COVID-19, there are people who are not getting an income at all right now and haven't been. And so it's easy to empathize with them if you've seen that elsewhere or you've been involved in it yourself. So I think that my empathetic sense of our community is what I bring to this board, and being able to understand. I know what you're going through. I've seen it and I've gone through it myself at some point in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Renee, the same question for you. HOA directors or volunteers, would you please share volunteer roles you've played that benefit this community?
Thank you for that. And I wasn't aware, Robert, that you worked with the Salvation Army. So that's always, I always learn new stuff. I jotted some notes down. So my volunteer activities for Sunnymead Ranch, I did share with Carolyn the activities committee. Tons of fun, bringing you know, New Year's, the brunch, the children's events, and so on. I also am a docent with Mr. Jacobs, his wife. She and I are docents at the Mission Inn, and we would be giving tours if we were not in COVID. I also am a member of the Riverside Land Conservancy. I support them. I go out and I plant oak trees out in the hills. I also work with UCR Botanical Gardens. I'm a gardening kind of person. But the one that touches my heart the most, to Robert and Thomas's part, is I work with Feeding America. You know, I work in their warehouse on a volunteer basis, you know, sorting food and so on, working with other volunteers. And then of course, I work now on the board, and I have to say,
30 seconds.
Thank goodness I'm retired. So Joan, think carefully. I work harder and probably as many hours working on the board as I have in a paying job. But I do, that gives me an opportunity to do that since I'm retired. So thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Coming back to Carolyn with one of the previous questions. What are your top 3 priorities for the HOA in 2021?
And not having been a director, I've been giving that some thought. I started to make some notes before the meeting started. If I'm fortunate enough to become a board member, one of my first goals is to be part of a harmonious board that can collaborate and brainstorm. As some others have said in conjunction to other questions, our communication to homeowners needs to be better. And I do have to give accolades to Renee when her first year on the board, where she's a good writer, she's organized, thorough, and she laid out some good communication so that homeowners would understand how vendors were chosen, just keeping them up to date on the major projects that were going on at that time. We need a website, and hopefully it won't be that much longer before we have that, and that will be so useful to all of us. I can't make that my personal goal because I have very little effect over it, but and then stealing Robert's idea a little bit and about strategizing, you know, the long-term goals and how do we get there? What are the steps involved? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Coming back to Thomas on a previous question. Thomas, coming back to you. Here, Thomas, on the question of HOA directors are volunteers. Please share volunteer roles you've had that benefit this community.
Well, I don't know about this community, but I have in the past, as Robert was mentioning, I helped feed the homeless up in Los Angeles for many years. And in fact, I used to work with Johnny Carson's sidekick, you know, the guy, well, I forgot what his name is now, but we used to feed, yeah, we used to feed the, yeah, up in Los Angeles. And also I worked with many of the nonprofits. HUD had a program whereby you could purchase property with 30% discount and then fix them up and turn around and resell them if you're a nonprofit. I used to work with about 18 to 20 nonprofits doing that type of work. Lately, you asked me what I've done. I'm saying I haven't done much. That's why I wanted to reach out and see whether or not I can kind of like build some momentum. But I love to be able to help as much as I possibly can, and I don't want to be a detriment.
Thank you very much. Just a time check. We have 20 minutes remaining. Thank you for listening and paying attention to your property, to something that's very important to your property, for all those who have joined us. Now for Joan, the question, your top three priorities for the HOA in 2021.
Well, and thinking about that, as I mentioned
Thomas was on the line.
As I mentioned before, communicating effectively, and what I found from being a risk and safety consultant, there are many people out there that are very technology challenged. So, you know, sending an email to them, they're not going to read it, or you know, even having an app on the phone. So, you know, another part of my goal is education, because I think education is key. You don't know what you don't know. So maybe, you know, having someone come in and, you know, volunteer to teach some type of class to homeowners, getting a higher percentage of the homeowners actively involved, because they live here and we need to hear their voice. So what is a way that, you know, we can get that 25% or that 15% up to 75% involvement? You know, people get complacent, or they feel like, well, my involvement is not going to matter. So, you know, there needs to be where we would all come together and brainstorm and say, well, what can we do? Is there something that is very engaging and will, you know, attract people in to want to be involved, and be part of the decision makers? And then again, you know, regularly reviewing the budgetary, actions and what's going on, and how we can improve that overall, that will also impact property values and maintain the beauty of our community. I will piggyback off of what Robert said. My son and I, we were going around when I was looking at properties, and we had pulled up that one street and saw the lake, and my son was like, "This would be awesome if you got a house here, Mom." And it just turned out that way. So yeah, it's a beautiful place to live.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Joan. Moving to Carolyn. Prior to last year's board election, there was much talk about needing a forensic audit. What are your thoughts, and would you be supportive of a forensic audit?
Yes, the forensic audit. Well, interestingly, when all of the buzz was about having a forensic audit, there had been a forensic audit already authorized by the board, and that the company that had been selected and agreed to by the director who was actually asking for a forensic audit, he had said, "Oh, that's a great company," and then he took somebody with him to kind of lay out what he was looking for with this company, and he took the advice of another homeowner who attended with him, and they insisted that they wanted to have a certified forensic audit company, although the company that they had visited was not only they did forensic audits as part of their regular business, and audits conducted by that level person can testify in court just like any certified auditor could, forensic auditor could. So it slowed the process. It ended the process because then the election took place and the discussions ended. So I don't know if they realized that there's not enough of evidence of the claims that this person was asserting, that the cost was too great for too little gain, just that there wasn't proof. So I'm not against the forensic audit. I would just like to make sure that if one is paid for by the HOA, that it is necessary, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Same question for Renee. Renee, prior to last year's board election, there was much talk about needing a forensic audit. Your thoughts, and would you be supportive of a forensic audit?
Yeah, so I was able to make some notes from the first question, and I would love to put this issue to bed once and for all for our community. And for Joan and Thomas, annually, our books are audited by a CPA. So that goes on every year. And homeowners are mailed the certified audited financial statements. Without getting into the weeds here, we had a director who was saying that there was malfeasance. I met with him. I was unconvinced. At the last candidate forum that I participated in, I said as much. I didn't find his information compelling. That being said, I was elected. The board discussed that at length. We agreed. We voted to go forward with a forensic audit to the tune of, to Joan's point, we're talking big bucks, maybe $30,000, maybe more, unbudgeted, I might add, but in hopes that we could just put this to bed, just like be done with it so we could move on. It didn't get completed for a number of reasons that really are no issue today. We had a 2020 election in which the gentleman who was advocating
30 seconds.
The forensic audit, he and his running mates became the majority on the board. And yet we find ourselves almost an entire year without a forensic audit. And since I can't discuss with you, the homeowners, the intricacies of that, I would ask you to step back and say, if there was malfeasance and the majority was in power, why did they not actually move forward with the forensic
Thank you,
audit?
Renee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renee. Back to Thomas for the previous question. your top 3 priorities for the HOA in 2021. I think you're on mute. You're on mute, Thomas. There you go.
I'm okay.
Yeah,
You can.
please. Yes. Oh, not now. Back
Okay.
off again.
Oh, how's
Now you're
that?
on.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All righty. Oh, thanks. I think one of the things I wanted to do, I spoke to you about bringing people in and creating a support center so that they can sit down and we can work together in terms of being able to support them, whether or not it's they're behind on their payments or whatever is causing, you know, their problem. And a second thing I would like to see too would be that that we would have certain things that is relevant to you buying a house, you know, like gardeners and stuff like this here. We should have a preferable list of people that we can get so that we don't have all of these other people that may do a good job and they're charging this over here and this and over here and this over that, so we can get the best pricing. I think that's one of the things that would help the neighborhood in terms of getting consistency. Because I was here for the first 2 years, I had guys charging me anywhere from $150 to $200, and then the next thing I end up getting a guy, and he's very reasonable. He's $100 a month, and he cuts it once a week. And I'm saying, oh God, I've died and went to heaven. I know a lot of people move into a neighborhood like this, and they're looking for certain things. I think if we could maybe set a standard for some of those things that needed to be handled on that. That's one. And the third thing would be I think the communication aspect of it. But I appreciate the next door thing because I do read it, and I find it very very satisfying to a certain degree.
Thank you, Thomas. Last person to answer this question, Robert Riddick. Prior to last year's board election, there was much talk about needing a forensic audit. Thoughts and support for forensic audit on your part?
So I'm going to dovetail on what Carolyn had already said about this issue. We did go through a process on the board of dealing with this both prior to the last election, and we did it again after this past election cycle. It has not moved any further, and I'm curious as to why it has not also, because that was really one of the primary chance, if you will, that we were facing during the run-up to the last election was forensic audit, forensic audit, forensic audit. Carolyn is exactly right, and so is Renee, that the offer was there. The board approved a forensic audit, and for whatever the reasons were, the gentleman decided that he wanted a different outcome, including selecting his own forensic audit accounting firm, which, as we've said, would have cost us thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. As a matter of fact, we initially put up at $250 an hour a consultation meeting for him. He went there and he left, and we got stuck with the $500 bill, and we're still waiting for a forensic audit to happen. So I guess bottom line is this, is that, and this is something that Thomas, you and Joan need to be aware of when you arrive at the board, is that every single month, the board members, every single member receives what we call a board packet. In that board packet is the entire financial record of the association for that previous 30-day period. Every line item, Joan, you had mentioned, is there. Every dollar spent is there, and every year we have a thorough audit performed against this association. If we didn't, we would be actually out of violation for what we're supposed to be as a not-for-profit organization. So I can't tell you any more about the forensic audit. I support it. I want it to happen so that, as Renee said, we can put it aside and put this thing to bed for what it is, which is nothing but a lot of nonsense.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for your comments. We have time only for the 2-minute closing remarks. It's gone pretty quickly. Thank you very much to the listening audience, the watching audience, viewing audience here with us. We'll go with, in this order, starting with Carolyn Gohler, your 2-minute closing remarks.
Thank you, Richard. I actually didn't prepare a closing offering, so I'll just kind of ad lib it. I want to just go full circle with why I'm running for the board, and the fact that I feel I have the skill set, the abilities to collaborate, get along with people, do my research. I have a process for analysis to reach a sound decision, and I think I'll make a great member of the board, and I hope others see that and will give me their votes.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Thomas Leonard Nails, your turn for 2 minutes to close.
Oh, okay. I would ad lib as I've been doing all the way, all along anyway. But anyway, like I say, I have about 50 years in my background in terms of real estate. I was a stationary engineer for the city of Los Angeles County and the thing. So I've worked with large real estate companies as manager, and also as an owner. I have a gold card in exchanging, and I think the information that I would contribute to would be based on me pulling from those experiences. I'm not going in saying that I know everything, I'm willing to whatever, but I am willing to listen and try to contribute in a positive manner, and hope that works.
Thank you, Thomas. Renee Osbourne.
I also am ad-libbing. I was jotting notes down here. I have to say that before this event, Joan and I chatted, and I had like butterflies in my stomach about this event. But you know what? This forum is a prime example of how a deliberative body is supposed to function. We each bring to the table a different talent, a different point of view. I have learned stuff from Thomas and Joan and Robert and Carolyn, even though I know those two, that makes me pause a moment. You know, there was no animosity saying, you know, you're wrong about this and you're horrible, you know, no animosity, no contentiousness. Robert had pounded into me. This is a deliberative body, your board of directors. No one person is supposed to have the run of the table, so to speak. And rightly so. And you as homeowners, you should expect that, because we should talk. And I have to tell you that our open forum meetings, it is important that we come prepared. And actually, by our code of ethics, we are supposed to come prepared, but we're supposed to make decisions in front of you. We're supposed to ask questions. We're supposed to issues and not rubber stamp them. And I have 27 seconds. I have to tell you that our due diligence requires that we spend time. So I think the board needs to be fast about things like fixing gates and those things. Those are easy. The big $250,000 projects, we need to slow our roll, so to speak, and make sure we know what the heck we're doing. I don't know about you. I'm not an engineer. And I think it's important.
Renee. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Move to Joan Parrish for your closing comments.
Well, I will say that I've had many great mentors throughout my career that have taught me many things. And one being that you can complain about things and complain and complain and complain, but you need to be part of the solution. You need to come to the table with ideas in how to solve problems. And there are problems that we need to solve, you know, and that's life, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. But I think we all need to work together. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, it needs to be, the board needs to be at a 30,000 view, And then the homeowner is the one that is really got the say. I mean, we're making sure that the CC&Rs are being taken, being enforced and that type of thing. But the inclusiveness of the homeowner, and we want this to be an enjoyable, happy place to live. Of course, it's not going to be, as someone mentioned earlier, Disneyland. I don't see it as a Disneyland, but it needs to be a place where we feel welcome home every time we drive into this community, and that needs to be for all of our homeowners. So, I believe that I could, have a piece of that and help. My objective is always to help. People need to be considered and thought about, and where are they coming from, like Thomas mentioned earlier. Are they having hard times? Is there something going on that maybe we need to know about so that we can help them, because we don't want them to up and leave. We want them to stay here.
Right.
So, and if they can help in improving the community, that's even better. So, I'm hoping that I can be a part of the board, because like I said, I get happiness out of helping. But as well, we have to stay objective. We have to be realistic. We have to stay on task. We've got, financials to manage. We've got a property to manage, that type of thing. So it is really important for everybody to help and be on the same page, and be able to have those challenging conversations with each other and still meet the goals.
Thank you, Joan. Robert Riddick?
Here, here.
Yes. Thomas and Joan, be prepared for your worst expectations once you get on the board. Okay. I came on the board back in 2008 because one of my homeowner neighbors encouraged me to run. Actually, I filled in a vacancy and had no idea what was waiting for me. I had no knowledge of this industry whatsoever. Fortunately, I've stuck around for a little bit and have learned enough to where even today I'm a qualified instructor for a CAI homeowner education program. So I think I've learned a little teeny bit, but in my closing, I just want to emphasize to all the homeowners out there that this is exactly who you are going to be selecting from to manage the affairs of this association come this next election. You've seen us, you've heard us report and respond back to the questions that were asked. And right now, the onus is on you. We've done our part. We've explained ourselves. We've shown you who we are. We've told you what our backgrounds are. You now have to make that decision on who you want to have sitting on the board to represent you. I can tell you right now that I didn't know Thomas before today. I had talked briefly with Joan online a couple of times. I know Carolyn through her activities, and of course, Renee and I served together. But I would say that I would be honored to serve with any of you. Any of you. You've displayed that ability to understand and comprehend what it takes to be a board member, and that's rare. So I applaud you. Also, I would say this, that for me, I'd like to continue going on. I think my track record has proven that I am a forceful and reasonable board member with a lot of knowledge and a lot of history of this association. I also will remind all of you that we have not had an assessment increase during my tenure on the board, and for at least the last 8 years now, going on 9 years. So those who are saying that, oh, the rates of the assessments are going crazy and sky high, back off, back off. The people that sat with me on this board for the past 8 and 9 years made sure that that didn't happen. Don't believe what you hear about the increases. They did not happen during the past 8 years.
Thank you very much, Robert.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to, before handing it over to Steve Jacobs, I'd like to thank, first of all, the homeowners who came on to look at what's essentially your city council, electing the city council of your community. And I'd also like to thank Carolyn Gohler, Thomas Leonard Nails, Renee Osbourne, Robert Riddick, and Joan Parrish for your time. And Steve, thank you. I'll turn it over to Steve to wind up for today.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Okay, now here's the important part, is having our community members get out the vote.
Right.
As you know, because of the pandemic, voting is very different this year than it has been in years past. And if you're new to the community, in years past, you could drop off your ballot over at the clubhouse. Well, now that all the meetings are virtual, that's not going to be available. So before I go over the timeline, just a couple of new rules. So there's no ballot box at the clubhouse, which means you either have to vote
Steve,
by mail or
Steve, would you
Oh,
would
sorry.
you screen share your
Oh, sure. I'm
slide?
sorry. I forgot about that.
Thanks.
Forgot about sharing my screen. There we go.
There we go. Visuals. So Steve is going to read this because for those folks who are just calling in,
There we go. There we go. That's the right one. Yeah. So I'm going to go read through this because we're right. If you're on a phone, it's very hard to kind of see this. So as I mentioned, there's no ballot box at the clubhouse. There's no in-person delivery as we have in past years where we met annually at the clubhouse. The annual meeting is still going forward, but it's virtual, which means you have to get your ballot in the mail or drive to Tustin, which I doubt many people are going to do. And then just like regular elections, you must remember to sign the envelope before you post it. If you do not sign it, the ballot will not be counted. And we have enough trouble getting enough people to actually vote anyway that this is crucially important.
Mhm.
All right, let's take a look at the timeline. So today was our first candidate forum. As I mentioned earlier, there is a second candidate, meet the candidate thing on February 1st at 6 p.m. And I did want to make a note that if you read your January edition of the Roundup, in the calendar section, they actually had a different date. And so the correct date is February 1st, as far as we know. And it's also a Zoom type webinar. So you're going to need to know the number and the passcode. So the easiest way to get that is by emailing Renee at renee@oursunnymeadranch.com, or you can look also in the Roundup on page 7 that actually mentions the webinar code and passcode. So just FYI. January 15th is when we expect the ballots will be received by the homeowners. If you do not get your ballot by the 15th, there's an email on the screen here. I'll read it. You can email the inspector to have a ballot sent to you. The email is info@ballotboxservices.com. That next line is, as we mentioned, the second candidate form. February 8th is the deadline to mail the ballot to the inspector. The inspector needs the ballot by February 8th is the ballot needs to be the inspector, and the deadline for the inspector to receive it is the 12th, so which is not many days. That's what, 4 days. So you have to make sure as soon as you get your ballot, fill it out, sign it, and please mail it as soon as possible. And then bottom line there reads the virtual annual meeting where there's no voting allowed is February 17th.
and Steve, may I just jump in here? Because so you are expected to receive your ballots on the 15th, and time is critical here. So if you don't get it by the 16th, you need to request a replacement. And as Steve said, that's at info@ballotboxservices.com. If you lose that or can't write it down, contact me. The deadline for your ballot to be valid for the first quorum has to be February 12th, a full 5 days prior to the annual meeting. And so that's why we're suggesting strongly that you need to put your ballot in the mail no later than February 8th, so that you're guaranteed that it's going to be there by the 12th and be valid. And again, our virtual annual meeting, last year, you could go to the clubhouse, you could get a ballot, you could vote, you could drop your ballot. None of that is taking place. So our virtual annual meeting, no voting is allowed. I cannot stress that strongly enough. So thank you, Steve, for letting me jump in there.
Just a couple more points before we wrap up. So the second Meet the Candidates session, if you feel like a question wasn't put forth today, or you have a comment you want to do for the second one, you can actually email that question or comment to Tony, T-O-N-I, @oursunnymeadranch.com. And they will call those together and you will do it that way. We have a favor to ask. When you leave this meeting today, this Zoom meeting, you'll have a short 6-question survey. It's very short. If you fill it out, please, that'd be great. If you would like a link to this recorded session so you can watch it again or forward it to some friends, there's an area within the survey to leave your email address. Please do that. And I think if there's nothing else, that wraps it up. And I appreciate all the candidates coming out and the comments, and also the viewers and people who logged into this webinar.